Mrs. Knowles is the Senior Specialist, Employers Activity for the International Labour Organization based in the Office of the Caribbean, which covers 22 English and Dutch-speaking countries and territories. A national of New Zealand, she has an honors degree in law from the University of Canterbury and is a graduate of the Advanced Management Program from the University of Hawaii. Anne's practical experience in change management was gained over 12 years as legal advisor, industrial executive with the New Zealand meat export processing industry. The economic situation and changes in technology saw the workforce reduced from 37,000 to 28,000 persons over that period. Upon the move from centralized industry-based bargaining to enterprise-focused agreements, Anne Knowles joined the New Zealand Employers Federation as the labor market manager to oversee the changes that the new system required. And she was the chief executive officer when she left to join the International Labour Organization in 2004. So over the last 10 years, she has worked in Southeast Asia and Eastern Europe, working with employers in countries transitioning to a market economy. She has been in the Caribbean office since August 2012. So we know Anne brings to us a wealth of knowledge about what is going on, not just in our region, but in the world internationally. So let me just welcome her to the podium. Welcome, Anne.
Good morning to you all. Thank you for that introduction. And I have to admit that despite being here in Trinidad and Tobago for the last 2 and a bit years, I haven't as yet acquired a Trini accent. In my last posting, which was 5 years in Hungary, with the different countries that I worked in there, from Ukraine, Bulgaria, Bosnia, Albania, I didn't have to learn the languages. I had an interpreter with me to be able to do the work. So when it was known that I was coming to the Caribbean and to be living in Trinidad, all my work colleagues said, "Oh, it will be so much easier for you, English speaking." So I said, yes. After the first week, I wrote back to them and said, not quite so easy. I need an interpreter from English to English. So the challenge worked both ways, of course. My New Zealand accent can be sometimes as confusing as the Trini one, so I hope that you follow along with what I'm going to be talking about. What I'm going to be focusing on is the changes that have occurred and where it's going to lead us to. And I'm starting at 1893, when New Zealand became the first country in the world to give women the right to vote. And to mark the centenary of that achievement in 1993, a series of prints was released from the National Archives called Women at Work at the Turn of the Century. And they showed various situations of women at work at that time. Women in a factory, here they are making matches, which of course was such a key component for any household in those days. We have flax cutters, making the linen for the material that was used. The nurses heading out on their bicycles to go around the district to look after the people who couldn't come to the hospitals. Cleaners, and my favourite, women taking afternoon tea, because this, of course, was the only way to keep abreast of what was happening in the community, and people needed then to know, as much as we do now, what exactly was going on. We're probably all a bit bemused at both the work being undertaken, the processes being used, as well as the clothing and hairstyles. But in 10, 20, 30 years' time, let alone 100 years' time, we here today, height of fashion and style, as we all are, with the latest in technological gadgets, will be seen as similarly outdated. Change has always been a constant in the nature, form and focus of work, with technological developments playing a major role in influencing the content, the structure, and the processes of work and workspaces. And the reaction to such change has also remained constant. And what we get first is that assertions that the way things have always been done is by far the best. There's no need for change. Predictions that the newfangled idea won't take on. And there's the famous saying by Ken Olsen, the head of Digital Equipment Corporation in 1977, there is no reason anyone would want a computer in their home. Now, that company no longer is in existence because I think getting the predictions that wrong probably had a fair impact on it. The next sort of move in the chain of looking at change is assertions that the new technologies or processes, whatever they might be, will lead to high unemployment and probably the end of civilization as we know it. Then there's the ultimate acceptance as things move on that the changes probably weren't that bad, that they may in fact have been beneficial. One of the extreme examples of prohibition, of change, was by the city of Cologne in 1412. So it's not a new phenomenon, this issue of managing change. They prohibited the production of spinning wheels by local craftsmen because the city feared that unemployment among textile manufacturers who used a hand spindle. In the 18th century, this newly invented spinning machine, taking over from the spinning wheel, allowed one worker to produce the amount of yarn previously produced by 200 individuals using spinning wheels. This gave rise to the Luddite movement, English textile artisans who protested violently against this labour-saving machinery. And we still have the term Luddites now for anyone who actually is against the introduction of new technology and new processes. What has progressed positively over the years is the recognition that change must be well managed, that all those affected, or even have the potential to be affected, must understand the reasons for changes and what the actual impact of those changes will have on them personally. It makes the role of the HR manager even more crucial to an organisation. What is probably most striking in technological developments over the last 10 to 20 years have been the devices that enable one to be connected at all times, a change so dramatic that it has totally redefined work and the workspace as we traditionally knew them to be. So I have for you a bit of a quiz. I want you to answer honestly to yourselves whether you have used your device, your iPhone, your iPad, your PC, your BlackBerry, whatever it might be, for work reasons, and not only serious work reasons, but checking, in case somebody has sent you an email, or in case somebody has shared a good joke from your work colleagues. But in these circumstances, in a meeting with colleagues, in a meeting with people outside your organisation, at dinner with your spouse or partner, at a social gathering with friends, at your school's sporting or school event, while driving, in bed, on holiday, while at a conference listening to a keynote speaker talking about the changing nature of work in the workspace. For too many, work is now 24/7, and the workspace is wherever your electronic device happens to be. That in turn leads to two areas for consideration: working in an office or on the employer's premises, or even in the same country, is no longer a requirement. The second area is individualism. Where, when, and how a person chooses to work is the new paradigm. So in light of this reality, I'm going to focus on 4 areas. The difference between individualism and meritocracy against the rather standard management hierarchy and seniority. I want to talk about communication with and management of people under this new paradigm. I want to talk about work and family integration, and finally the role of the customer. The topic, of course, of changing in the work and workspace is immense. I could have chosen any topic at all to focus on, but these 4 I thought were ones that might have a resonance with you when you, as was said, go out of this room back to where you actually do your work. So the first one, meritocracy versus hierarchy. There's been an excellent article in the Economist magazine of the 3rd of October that the Intelligence Unit put together called Agent of Change, the Future of Technology Disruption in Business. And that report said that by 2020, there will be a sharp decline in small and medium enterprises, with the focus being on very large organisations on the one hand, and micro businesses or individual contractors on the other. Backroom functions, accounting, IT, payroll, marketers, secretaries, etc., will be outsourced, but more importantly, the way teams are put together to solve problems and undertake specific areas of work will change. Small virtual companies are capable of rapidly bringing together ad hoc teams of specialists from around the world to solve particular challenges. This in turn will require flatter management structures, with many believing the role of the generalist manager to disappear. Advances in collaboration will enable individuals to team up as needed to solve problems of all kinds, from building an organisation-specific app to developing a new logarithm for routing freight. These online exchanges will allow individuals or small teams to build effective public profiles, which mean third parties are willing to collaborate with them. The underlying notion, therefore, of a move from hierarchies to meritocracies is simple. When an individual's contribution is measured by their ability to input meaningfully in order to solve a problem, they become visible within the organisation. An example might be a law firm where someone posts a client problem on an internal collaborative tool, enabling anyone to contribute ideas and offer help. Traditional measures such as age, years of experience, or prestige of qualifications or status become less relevant in determining an employee's worth. And such a scenario puts real meaning into the requirement of lifelong learning. Individuals will need more to do to upskill themselves and reskill themselves, and will have to constantly do so over time. It also means that fewer people are likely to have fixed contracts, with more becoming freelance contractors, selling their skills to larger organisations. Decentralisation will continue, not only because of cost pressures, but also because of an acceptance that flexible working practices make sense to employers and employees. Which leads me to my second point, title up there, communication with and management of people. In keeping with organisational changes, managers no longer focus on having employees simply comply with rules and instructions. Rather, the focus in the future is going to ensure understanding of and commitment to organisational goals and mission. And most of your organisations will, of course, have a mission statement, a vision statement, the objectives, the strategic objectives that you want to achieve, that are dealt with often by a board who then write them up and then you might have your mission on a piece of paper on the wall. More often, it seems to be that they are put in the office of the chief executive and nobody sees them ever again. The focus of what an organisation stands for and what it's going to bring to the stakeholders, the community in which it works, is going to be increasingly important between managers getting a commitment to make that organisation successful. As employees gain more decision-making authority and latitude due to reduced hierarchical decision makers, managers become more supporters than commanders. The challenge for organisations, and again particularly HR managers, is how to keep workers engaged and connected. In the United Kingdom, over 4 million people usually worked from home last year, 2013. 65% of them were male, so it's not just women at home balancing their child-minding, child-rearing careers with work. In the same survey, many more millions sometimes worked from home. To manage this effectively requires two things. It means you have to trust staff. And this is quite a major change in focus. Trust staff to be able to get on with the work that they have been given to do, knowing that they will do it at a quality that you expect, and not having somebody over their shoulder all the time to see if they are on Facebook, using the internet for things that aren't business related or whatever. So to make this work, trust is a key component. And the second area is that the recognition that people can feel isolated if the relationship is not managed properly. And you don't want an isolated part of your workforce, because that means that they are then not committed to your organisational goals and outcomes. And it means also that people are not going to be working at their best way of doing so. This has been recognised in the UK because of the sheer numbers of people working from home. Frances O'Grady, the General Secretary of the United Kingdom Trades Union Congress, so representing the workers, said in a media release in May of this year, with government figures showing a further 4.5 million people would like to work from home more often, there is still much more that employers can do to meet this unmet demand for more flexible working. She went on to say, employers who offer the flexibility that workers want will be best placed to attract, retain, and motivate good staff. And I think this is another area where we have to consider quite clearly the reaction in some of our communities when flexibility is mentioned. It's almost a pejorative. Flexibility, that means that you want workers to work harder, for longer, for less money. No, it doesn't. Flexibility means a recognition that there are different ways of working now, and that the hours aren't necessarily 8 till 5, Monday to Friday. You certainly can't operate any business in the tourism sector on that basis. So the fact of people, working at night in restaurants and at weekends and on public holidays because tourists still need to eat on Christmas Day when they're travelling, means that you already have the flexibility. So talking about it more in terms of meeting the business objectives and being good for both employees and employers is going to make this management of change much more effective. So the best way to manage employees working from home or remotely is by encouraging independence of thought and action and developing continuous communication, supported by regular face-to-face meetings. These meetings can be by video or conference calls or other online tools, so that experiences, ideas, and success and performance issues can be shared. People identify themselves by their work, and work groups will still want to engage and meet up with others. But this means in the future a different type of workspace being developed. The whole notion of, sorry, I haven't got my thing in front of me, so that's what I said just now, and now I'm going on to show you different workspaces. So, shared workspaces, hot desking, where more than one person has the same desk that they come and go to use it. Workers coming in for specific periods, work hubs, small centres at the periphery of towns and cities where local workers can drop in as needed, either to join a telepresence meeting or else simply to work in the company of others for a few hours, are all examples of making sure that technology doesn't remove people from people. People need people. And the way of ensuring that you get the engagement and the focus and the meeting of your requirements is to ensure that the face-to-face aspect isn't removed. Technology, of course, is already used in the hospitality industry to manage people. The @Go Roster app has a roster design that a manager can use to visualise future work schedules. The costs for rosters are automatically calculated as they are built. The app will warn if an employee has requested leave for the period that is being rostered for and show what the employee's preferred work hours are. The app is able to accommodate things such as exam timetables and even second jobs that an employee might have. A push of a button communicates the roster to employees by SMS and or email and automatically receives and collates responses saying whether the person can indeed work or not. So, does that mean that all HR communication can be done by text message or email, including perhaps terminating someone's employment? The clear answer in jurisdictions that have the British-based understanding of natural justice, as the Caribbean does, is no. There are a number of cases in various industrial tribunals and courts in New Zealand and Australia that I have identified more easily, where texts saying, "No need to come into the salad bowl today, we'll be in touch," and "Your employment is terminated effective immediately," were held to be procedurally unfair and thus unjustified. And as a judge went as far in a case in New Zealand last year to say, "I have to say that both the employee and the employer relied far too much on obscure text messages, a matter that appears far too often in cases before the authority these days. Indeed," he said, "it sometimes seems that some people have lost the ability or inclination to actually speak to each other at all." And this was quite clear that under the new scheme, even although the technology is there to assist, the basic rules of personal interaction and management must be considered. Communication of expectations and management of people to ensure those expectations are fulfilled are as important now as they ever have been and will likely gain, if anything, more importance in the diffused workplace becomes more of a reality. Now I'm going to talk about work-family integration. And I guess the focus in recent times has been on work-family or work-life balance, as though the two areas are mutually exclusive. You weigh one up against the other. And this was never a reality. No one forgets the concerns about a sick child or a death of a relative or difficulty paying the rent just because you happen to be at work. And likewise, no one forgets the deadline of a piece of work or differences of opinion within the work team just because you happen to be at home. However, it's different thinking about an issue or spending an allotted time after dinner dealing with a work issue than the 24/7 culture we have now. Now, your consideration of the questions in the quiz that we had earlier clearly show that home is no longer a refuge, and neither is the commute to work, nor an evening out with friends, nor a holiday, and soon not even an airplane journey will be a haven from the incessant intrusion of a mobile phone, and I do not look forward to that day. A recent survey undertaken for Expedia of 8,560 people in 25 countries asked how many took their employer-provided electronic devices on holiday. Norway topped the rankings with 83% of people taking them with them, against an average of 63% across 25 countries and all those people. So much for taking a break and coming back refreshed. So this also needs to be managed. Your expectations of employees cannot be that they are at the behest of the employer 24/7. It does them no good, it does your business no good. So technology is clearly a two-edged sword. It can free people from a desk, allowing more work flexibility, but on the other hand, it is more difficult to disconnect in an always-on world. What this means also is a need to recognise that information overload can lead to paralysis and a deterioration in any sort of balanced life. So to achieve a work-family or work-life integration, workers will need to choose just how engaged they wish to be. And employee involvement is crucial in determining just what flexible work patterns will be. Labour laws must be reformed to enhance worker voice and improve flexibility for both employers and employees. Parties closest to the problem must be involved in shaping their own solutions. Quality part-time jobs, flexible working hours, portable benefits, and more women in leadership positions are the policies that need to be implemented. But to be of even more importance is to share control and responsibility with employees. And I've listed 4 things here that are important. For frontline employees and their supervisors are the ones who know their work practices best, must be empowered to come up with suggestions. Employees, both men and women, must be engaged to overcome often prevailing work cultures that if somebody does take part-time work for a period or work strange flexible hours, that it's going to impede their career progression. Unless that happens, then nobody is going to take up the particular flexible arrangements that might be there. Dialogue must take place so that subtle resistance from supervisors, because it's more difficult to manage people who aren't sitting there where they can see them, and resentment by other workers that so-and-so is getting it easy because they're allowed to come in later and work later and have hours that suit them. So dialogue, talking about what it is that makes the organisation work best, is crucial. The workplace of the future will be one where a high level of trust and communication from both sides will be vital for survival. And I want to finish really talking about the role of the customer. Again, in the Economist Intelligence Unit report, one of the most interesting survey answers that chief executives of the largest companies gave in their responses was that by 2020, the main source of new product and service ideas would be from customers and online communities, making a total of 49% of where their ideas came from, compared with the high focus on R&D, or research and development, internally today. So the use of technology in allowing organisations to interact with customers, from augmented reality that brings products to life in both physical and virtual stores, to location-based services enabled by smartphones, will support the personalisation approach that the new individual focus calls for. And the ability of the customer to respond immediately to good or bad services or products is yet another issue that must be managed. Sites such as TripAdvisor, Booking.com, etc., enable a customer to give their views to a globalised world as compared to a few friends and family who might have feigned interest before about the marvellous or the terrible meal out while visiting St. Lucia. And of course, the ubiquitous habit of taking photos of the meal you are about to eat and putting it on your Facebook page highlights the immediacy of the impact of good or bad reviews. It's increasingly difficult to hide bad behaviour, high prices or poor service when customers have a means of broadcasting this to the world instantly and at zero cost. This again means an enhanced role for HR managers. It is not only important for a company, particularly in the hospitality tourism sector, to know what is being said about their business and to respond, but it can also be a useful guide to employee behaviours that either should be acknowledged positively or otherwise. If 3 out of 5 postings on TripAdvisor say the greeting at reception was less than friendly, then further training may be urgently called for. If, on the other hand, an employee is continually singled out for praise, then that too should be recognised. Policies around the interface between employees and customers may need to be reviewed in light of this phenomenon, however. Many customers do not appreciate having the TripAdvisor awards sign pointed out to them on their departure from the restaurant, hotel or tour and being asked pointedly to give a positive review. The old adage, the customer is king, has a new resonance when greater transparency, thanks to greater access to information via price comparison and service rating tools, enables pressure to be put on uncompetitive organisations. The workplace of the future and the workers in it or associated with it will need to factor that accessibility to previously considered commercially sensitive information as the price for an enhanced reputation that enables the enterprise to withstand the challenges of changes that might otherwise threaten its very viability. So to polish off my crystal ball and the hope that I might do better than the editor of the Times of London, who wrote in 1894 that in 50 years' time the streets of London would all be under 9 feet of horse manure, my view of the work of the future is that it will be more cognitively complex, more team-based and collaborative. It will be dependent on technological competence, so continuing to upskill and reskill all employees to be able to deal with that. It will be time-pressured because of the very accessibility that the new technology enables. It will be more mobile and less dependent on geography. And organisations will be leaner and more agile. They will be able to respond immediately to the postings even that are on TripAdvisor if there is something perceived to be not quite to the standard required. More focused on identifying value from the customer's perspective, not saying, well, this is what we offer, take it or leave it, making sure that the products that you have tailored are for those who want to use them. More tuned to dynamic competitive requirements and strategy, less hierarchical in structure and decision-making authority, less likely to provide lifelong careers and job security, and continually reorganising to maintain or gain competitive advantage. So for those of you who will be working in this new paradigm over the next 10, 20, 30, 40 years, let's see how it all works out. But good luck, and be open to accepting change and recognise the positives that come from it, as well as being able to overcome some of the negatives. Thank you.